Long ago, in a quiet town surrounded by golden sands and tall palm trees, there lived a poor woodcutter named Ali Baba. Every morning, he would walk to the forest with his worn-out axe on his shoulder, cutting and collecting bundles of wood to sell in the marketplace. Life was not easy for him. He lived humbly in a small clay house with his wife, often struggling to earn enough for bread and dates. Ali Baba had an older brother named Kasim, who had married a rich merchant's daughter. Kasim lived in a grand house, wore fine silk clothes, and cared only about his gold and status. Though Ali Baba and Kasim were brothers, they could not have been more different. One was humble and kind-hearted, while the other was greedy and proud. Kasim often mocked Ali Baba for his poverty, telling him, "You'll die cutting trees, while I dine on riches." But Ali Baba never answered back. He believed that kindness and patience were worth more than gold. One bright morning, as Ali Baba swung his axe through the forest, he heard a distant sound, the thundering of many horses. Startled, he climbed up a tall tree for safety and hid among the thick leaves. Soon, a large group of 40 fierce-looking men rode into the clearing. Their eyes were sharp, their swords glittered in the sun, and each man carried a heavy leather sack slung across his back. Ali Baba's heart pounded. Who were these men? He stayed perfectly still, afraid to breathe too loudly. From his hiding place, he watched as the horsemen stopped before a huge rock cliff that stood like a wall in the forest. The leader of the group, a tall man dressed in black robes, stepped forward and raised his arm. In a deep, commanding voice, he cried out, "Open sesame!" Ali Baba could hardly believe what he saw next. The solid rock began to tremble and slowly slide open, revealing a dark cave entrance behind it. The men disappeared inside, one by one, carrying their sacks with them. When the last of them entered, the rock rolled shut again, leaving no trace of an opening. Ali Baba's eyes widened. A magic cave, he thought. Those must be thieves hiding their treasure. He waited quietly in the tree, his breath caught in suspense. After what felt like hours, the rock moved again. The leader came out first, followed by the others. This time, their sacks looked lighter. The leader shouted once more, "Close sesame." The great stone slid shut. Then, without a word, the 40 horsemen mounted their horses and rode away, their dust fading into the desert wind. Ali Baba stayed still for a long time, making sure the coast was clear. Then curiosity and courage overcame his fear. He climbed down the tree and stood before the mighty rock. The words echoed in his mind. "Open sesame." He hesitated, then said softly, "Open sesame." To his astonishment, the rock began to move. A cool, mysterious wind brushed against his face as the entrance appeared before him. Ali Baba stepped inside, his heart pounding with wonder. The cave was vast and glittering. Golden coins, jeweled crowns, silks, and fine carpets were piled high to the ceiling. Everywhere he looked, there were treasures that could buy entire kingdoms. It was as though the sun itself had been captured inside that cave. Ali Baba could barely breathe. "By the grace of heaven," he whispered, "this must be the thieves' secret hoard." But he did not lose his sense. He said to himself, "I will take only what I need to feed my family. Greed is what traps the foolish." He filled a small sack with gold coins, just enough to ease their poverty, and hurried out. Once outside, he turned back and said clearly, "Close sesame." The rock sealed itself again, hiding the secret from the world. Ali Baba made his way home, trembling with excitement. His wife was astonished when she saw him carrying a heavy sack of gold. "Ali Baba, where did you find this?" she cried. Ali Baba smiled and said quietly, "It is a secret I will tell only you. But we must be careful, for wealth can bring trouble as easily as it brings joy." That night, as the moonlight fell on their humble home, Ali Baba and his wife counted the gold coins, their hearts filled with gratitude. They did not know that this discovery would soon lead them into great danger, where cleverness, courage, and loyalty would be their only shields against 40 ruthless thieves. The poor woodcutter's life had changed forever, all because he had heard 2 magical words whispered in the forest, "Open sesame." When dawn broke over the desert the next morning, Ali Baba's small home gleamed with a quiet joy it had never known before. For the first time, his wife had enough flour to bake warm bread and enough oil to light the lamp without fear of running out. Still, Ali Baba was cautious. He told his wife gently, "We must keep this a secret. If anyone learns where the gold came from, trouble will find us." His wife nodded, though her eyes were wide with excitement. She wanted to count exactly how much gold her husband had brought home. "Ali Baba," she said, "let me weigh it, so we know how rich we have become." Ali Baba smiled, amused by her curiosity. "Very well, but remember, keep our secret safe." Their home was simple, with no proper scale to weigh coins. So, his wife decided to borrow one from Kasim's household. For her sister-in-law, Kasim's wife, often lent her things. She went to Kasim's grand mansion, where servants hurried through marble halls, and Kasim's wife sat surrounded by fine jewelry and silk veils. "My sister," said Ali Baba's wife politely, "may I borrow a small measuring scale for a short while? I will return it soon." Kasim's wife agreed, but she was suspicious. She knew her poor relatives could barely afford enough grain to measure, let alone something worth weighing. Out of curiosity, She secretly smeared a little wax at the bottom of the scale, thinking, "Let's see what they are measuring." Ali Baba's wife hurried home, placed the golden coins in the pan, and smiled as the scale tilted under the heavy weight. When she was done, she wiped the dust from her hands and returned the scale to Kasim's wife, unaware that a single gold coin had stuck to the wax at the bottom. When Kasim saw it, his eyes widened and his heart burned with greed. "A gold coin! My poor brother weighing gold!" he shouted. "How can that be?" His wife told him everything. Kasim's jealousy grew like a fire. He stormed out of his grand house and went straight to Ali Baba's humble door. "Brother," Kasim said, trying to smile, "you have been distant. I've missed you. Come, tell me, how have you found such fortune?" Ali Baba hesitated. He knew Kasim's heart was greedy, but he couldn't lie to his own brother. After much pleading and false kindness, Kasim's voice softened. "I am your brother, Ali Baba. I will not harm you. Just tell me your secret." Finally, Ali Baba sighed. "Very well. I found a cave in the forest, opened by magic words, opened sesame. Inside is a treasure beyond imagination. But beware, Kasim, it belongs to 40 thieves. I only take what we need. Greed will bring ruin." Kasim's eyes glimmered with goldlust. He pretended to thank Ali Baba, but inside, he was already planning to claim the treasure for himself. That night, while Ali Baba slept peacefully, Kasim loaded 10 donkeys with empty chests and set out for the forest. At sunrise, Kasim stood before the rock cliff and repeated the magic words, "Open sesame." The stone rolled aside, revealing the glittering cave. Kasim gasped at the sight, piles of jewels, gold, and silk shining brighter than sunlight. Laughing greedily, he filled chest after chest with treasure. "I will be richer than any man in Persia," he cried. But when it was time to leave, he paused. What were those words again? He muttered, "Open barley. No, open wheat, open corn." Panic seized him. He could not remember. He dropped his gold and ran to the rock, shouting random words, "Open fig, open almond." But the door stayed shut. Hours passed. The air grew cold. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The 40 thieves had returned. Their leader's sharp eyes spotted Kasim's frightened face. "Someone has discovered our secret," he roared. Kasim fell to his knees, begging for mercy. But thieves have no mercy. They struck him down and left his lifeless body inside the cave. When they departed, the stone sealed again, bearing Kasim with his greed. That evening, when Kasim did not return, his wife grew worried. She went to Ali Baba in tears. "Brother, my husband is missing. He took 10 donkeys and has not come home." Ali Baba's heart filled with dread. He knew at once what had happened. The secret cave had claimed his brother's life. Without hesitation, he saddled his donkey and went into the forest under the cover of night. When he reached the rock and whispered, "Open sesame," the door groaned open once more. Inside, under the torchlight, he found Kasim's body cold and still among the heaps of gold. Ali Baba wept for his foolish brother. Though Kasim's greed had caused his death, Ali Baba could not leave him there. He gently lifted the body onto his donkey and carried him home, praying that no one in town would ever learn what had truly happened. In his heart, Ali Baba knew the cave's treasure was a gift of fate, but it came with a dangerous price. In the days that followed Kasim's burial, Ali Baba's household tried to return to peace. Yet Morgiana could not shake the feeling that danger was close. Every time she walked through the market or fetched water from the well, her sharp eyes scanned for strangers. The memory of the mysterious chalk mark still haunted her. She knew the thieves were out there watching, waiting, and plotting. Ali Baba, trusting her instincts, said, "You have saved us once, Morgiana. If your heart warns you of danger again, I will listen." One hot afternoon, as the sun blazed over the marketplace, Morgiana went to buy grain. There, in the corner of her eye, she noticed a tall man in black robes, his face half covered, his eyes scanning each house along the street. He was not from their town. His movements were careful and secretive. Morgiana's heart thumped. It must be one of the thieves. The man stopped near Ali Baba's house, pretending to adjust his sandals. She watched as he made another mark on the wall, this time with a piece of red chalk. When he walked away, Morgiana waited a moment, then slipped quietly back to her master's home. "Master," she whispered, "the thieves have returned. They seek to find us again." Ali Baba's face turned pale. "Then, what can we do?" Morgiana thought quickly. "They find us by marks, by signs, so we must give them too many to follow." She ran through the street, taking a piece of red chalk from the kitchen shelf, and marked every door in the same way, each one with a red symbol, just like the one on their wall. When the thieves returned that night, their leader dismounted from his horse and smiled coldly. "This time," he said, "we will not fail. Look for the red mark." But when his men fanned out across the street, they froze in disbelief. Every house left, right, near, and far was marked in the same way. The leader's face darkened. "Fools, we have been tricked again." He ground his teeth in rage and ordered them to retreat. "We will return once more, but this time I will go myself and mark the house in a way no one can copy." The next day, the leader disguised himself as a humble oil merchant. He carried a large jar of oil on his shoulder and walked through town slowly, pretending to sell his goods. As he passed Ali Baba's home, he glanced at the doorway carefully, memorizing every detail. Instead of marking it, he simply fixed it in his mind. When he returned to the thieves' hideout that evening, he said coldly, "Tomorrow, we will strike. I know the house by heart. There will be no more mistakes." That night, Morgiana sat by the fire, uneasy. The world outside was too still, too quiet. Even the dogs had stopped barking. She felt in her heart that something was coming. At dawn, a group of men rode silently toward the town. One by one, they arrived at a small grove near Ali Baba's house. Each carried a large oil jar, but inside 39 of those jars were not filled with oil. They were hiding the remaining thieves. The leader, still dressed as a merchant, knocked politely on Ali Baba's door. "Peace be upon you, good sir," he said in a friendly tone. "I am a merchant traveling with my oil jars. Night has caught us on the road, and I cannot find an inn. Might I ask for the kindness of a place to rest until morning?" Ali Baba, a generous man, smiled. "Of course, good merchant, you and your jars may stay in my courtyard." Morgiana, watching from the kitchen, felt something strange. The merchant's eyes were too sharp, his voice too calm, but she said nothing yet. She helped Ali Baba prepare a place for him to rest, and ordered a servant to bring a lamp to the courtyard. As the night deepened, Morgiana went to fetch more oil for the lamps. She walked toward the courtyard where the jars were kept. As she neared them, she heard a faint whisper from inside one jar. "Shall we come out now, leader?" Morgiana froze. Her blood turned cold, but her mind stayed clear. She whispered back softly, mimicking the leader's voice, "Not yet. Wait for the signal." Then she ran quietly back to the kitchen, her heart pounding. She quickly lit the stove and set a large pot of oil to boil. When the oil bubbled fiercely, she carried it carefully and silently to the courtyard. One by one, she poured the scalding oil into each jar. Inside, there were muffled cries, then silence. When she reached the last jar and found it truly filled with oil, she realized that only one thief remained, their leader. Morgiana returned to her room, pretending to sleep at midnight. The leader crept from his bed, eager to give the signal. When he saw that all his men were dead, he fled into the darkness, vowing revenge. The next morning, Ali Baba found the jars and was horrified to learn what had nearly happened. Morgiana told him everything. Ali Baba trembled with gratitude. "You have saved my life again, Morgiana. Heaven has blessed me with your wisdom and courage." But Morgiana's eyes were still alert. "Master, one man escaped. He will return. We must be watchful." And indeed, she was right. The tale of the thieves was not yet over. The morning after the dreadful night of the oil jars, Ali Baba walked through his courtyard in stunned silence. The air was heavy with the scent of oil and smoke, and the jars that had once hidden death now stood empty and harmless. Morgiana stood beside him, her eyes steady, her hands clasped. "Master," she said softly, "the danger is not yet gone. One man lives, their leader. He will not rest until he avenges his men." Ali Baba nodded gravely. "You are right, Morgiana. We must stay cautious. But first, we must bury these men and remove their traces. The town must not know what happened." Together, with the help of a few trusted servants who were told nothing of the truth, they dug deep graves outside the city walls under the cover of night. Morgiana worked tirelessly, her mind always alert for signs of pursuit. When the last of the jars had been buried, Ali Baba whispered a prayer of thanks for their deliverance. But far away, in the rocky hills that hid the thieves' secret cave, their leader sat by a dying fire, his heart burning with rage. He had escaped with his life, but his men, his 40 loyal followers, were gone, destroyed by the cunning of one woman. His pride was shattered, his power lost. He swore to himself, "I will not rest until Ali Baba and that clever servant lie dead. They shall pay for every drop of blood spilled." For several weeks, the leader disguised himself as a traveling merchant and stayed in a distant town, thinking carefully about his next move. He realized that if he attacked openly, he would fail again. He needed patience, cleverness, and deceit, the very weapons Morgiana had used against him. One morning, he rode back to the town where Ali Baba lived, dressed as a rich and respectable merchant named Khwaja Hussein. He rented a large shop in the market and filled it with fine goods, silks, carpets, jewels, and jars of precious oil. Within days, his polite manners and sharp business sense made him popular among the townsfolk. No one suspected he was the leader of the 40 thieves. Ali Baba's son, who often went to the market to buy supplies, noticed the new merchant's fine wares. One day, as he examined a piece of silk, Khwaja Hussein smiled kindly. "You seem like a young man of good sense. Tell me, where do you live?" The boy, innocent and proud, replied, "I am the son of Ali Baba, the woodcutter." The merchant's eyes flashed for a moment, but he quickly covered his expression with a warm smile. "Ah, the Honorable Ali Baba. I have heard of his honesty. I should like to make his acquaintance." That evening, Ali Baba's son returned home and told his father about the generous merchant who wished to meet him. Ali Baba, being kind and trusting, said, "Invite him to dine with us tomorrow. It will be good to welcome such a man." When Morgiana heard of it, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. A new merchant, so soon after the thieves vanished. "Master, forgive me, but my heart does not trust strangers so easily." Ali Baba chuckled. "You worry too much, Morgiana. The man has been kind to my son. What harm can come from a meal?" But Morgiana could not shake her unease. She began to watch the market from a distance, observing Khwaja Hussein as he worked. He was polite, yes, but she noticed how his eyes followed Ali Baba's son, how he lingered near their street more than necessary. Her instincts whispered, "He is no merchant. He is hunting us." That night, the merchant prepared carefully. He packed a dagger in his robe and planned his strike. "Tomorrow night," he muttered, "Ali Baba's blood will wash away my shame, and that woman, the devil who tricked Mishi, will die screaming." When the next evening came, Ali Baba welcomed the merchant into his home with warmth and hospitality. "You honor us, Khwaja Hussein," he said. "Please, dine with us as our guest." Morgiana served the food quietly, her eyes never leaving the stranger. His voice was calm, his smile steady, but there was something in his movements that made her uneasy. Every time she passed him the cup or the dish, she noticed his hand brush near his robe, where the hilt of a hidden knife bulged beneath the fabric. While the others talked and laughed, Morgiana slipped out to the kitchen and whispered to herself, "It is him. It must be the leader of the thieves. He has come to finish what he started." She thought quickly. There was only one way to be certain and one way to save her master's life again. When she returned, she carried a small jug of wine and a silver dagger tucked beneath her sleeve. Her heart beat fast, but her face remained calm. "Master," she said gently, "as it is our custom, shall I dance to honor our guest?" Ali Baba smiled. "Yes, Morgiana, let us bring joy to our table." Khwaja Hussein nodded, trying to hide his unease. "A fine custom indeed," he said, leaning back in his chair. Morgiana began to dance gracefully, the rhythm of her anklets echoing softly through the room. As she twirled, her eyes never left the stranger's face. She could see the sweat forming on his brow, the tension in his hand. At the perfect moment, when all eyes were upon her, Morgiana leaped forward like lightning pulled, the dagger from her sleeve and plunged it straight into the merchant's chest. Khwaja Hussein gasped, his disguise falling away. "You, devil woman," he choked, before collapsing to the floor. Ali Baba and his son leaped up in shock. "Morgiana, what have you done?" She bowed her head and said calmly, "Master, look beneath his robe. You will find the mark of the thieves." When Ali Baba tore open the man's clothes, he froze. There, upon his chest, was the symbol of the 40 thieves, the leader himself. Ali Baba looked at Morgiana with awe. "You have saved my life for the third time. You are not only brave, you are wise beyond measure." After Morgiana's swift and daring act, silence filled Ali Baba's home. The lifeless body of the false merchant Khwaja Hussein, the leader of the 40 thieves, lay still on the carpet, his disguise now meaningless. Ali Baba's son stood frozen in disbelief. But Morgiana's breath came calm and steady, her dagger still gleaming in her hand. Ali Baba looked at her, torn between shock and gratitude. "Morgiana," he said, "had you not acted when you did, we would all have been dead before dawn." Morgiana bowed her head humbly. "Master, I only did what was necessary." This man was the last of the thieves. His eyes told me he came to kill. Ali Baba knelt beside the dead man, searching through his robe. There, inside a secret pocket, he found a small parchment map marked with strange symbols, paths leading from the forest to their very street. His heart sank as he realized just how long they had been watched. "He would have destroyed us all," Ali Baba whispered. Morgiana gently placed the dagger aside. "His evil is over now, my master, but the lesson remains. The treasure that lies hidden in the forest is both a blessing and a curse. It brought you fortune, but it also brought danger." Ali Baba nodded slowly. "You are right, Morgiana. The gold tempted my brother and cost him his life. It brought these thieves to my door. I have seen enough blood spilled because of it." That very night, under the cover of darkness, Ali Baba and Morgiana buried the leader's body deep in the desert, far from the town. No one would ever find him again. They returned home in silence, the moon glimmering softly on the sand like scattered silver. When dawn came, Ali Baba gathered his family and told them everything, the truth of the cave, the thieves, and Morgiana's bravery. His son was in awe. "Father," he said, "we owe our lives to her. What will you do for her now?" Ali Baba smiled gently. "Morgiana is no longer a servant. From this day, she is part of our family." But Morgiana shook her head. "Master, I have only done my duty. I wish for no reward, only peace." Ali Baba turned to his son. "Then peace she shall have, but also honor. My son, you have no wife. If Morgiana agrees, I would bless your marriage, for she is wise and noble." At first, Morgiana blushed and lowered her gaze. "Master, I am only a servant." But Ali Baba's son stepped forward and said kindly, "You are braver and wiser than any woman I have known. It would be my honor." After some thought, Morgiana agreed, and soon the household was filled with joy instead of fear. The townsfolk whispered of the humble woodcutter who had become a man of fortune, but none knew the true danger he had faced. Weeks later, Ali Baba returned once more to the forest. He stood before the great rock cliff, the memory of that first day flooding his heart. He spoke softly, "Open sesame." The rock groaned and slid open, revealing the glittering treasure within the gold, the jewels, and the silks that had caused so much sorrow. Ali Baba entered the cave, this time not with greed, but with gratitude. He took only enough gold to live comfortably and to help the poor of the town. As he looked around, he whispered, "Let this place remain hidden from the greedy and the cruel. Only the wise may know its secret." When he left, he said firmly, "Close sesame." The rock sealed again forever, as if swallowing the past. Years passed, and Ali Baba lived peacefully with his family. His name became known for kindness and generosity, not for wealth. The cave remained untouched, its treasure sleeping beneath the mountain. Morgiana and Ali Baba's son built a happy home, and their children grew up hearing the tale of the brave woman who had outwitted 40 thieves. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Ali Baba would sit by the fire and remember the voice that had first spoken those words in the forest. He would smile and say to himself, "Riches may fill your hands, but wisdom fills your heart." And so, the story of Ali Baba and the 40 thieves came to an end, not with gold or glory, but with courage, wit, and the triumph of good over greed. The cave of treasures stayed hidden in the desert sands, waiting perhaps for another soul to find it one day. But if they did, they would do well to remember the poor woodcutter who learned that fortune without wisdom is more dangerous than poverty itself. The sun rose over the quiet town, casting golden light over Ali Baba's home, a home that now felt safe again after so many nights of fear. The body of the false merchant, the leader of the 40 thieves, had been buried in the desert, and with him, the last shadow of danger seemed to fade. Yet the memory of what had happened still lingered, like smoke after a fire. For days, Ali Baba could not stop thinking of Morgiana's bravery. Whenever he looked at her, he saw not a servant, but the woman who had saved his life, his sons, and everything he held dear. The household owed her everything. That evening, as the lamps flickered softly, Ali Baba called his son and Morgiana into the main hall. The scent of rosewater filled the air, and trays of sweet dates and almonds were set before them. Ali Baba, dressed in a clean white robe, spoke with warmth in his voice. "Morgiana," he said, "your wisdom and courage have defeated the thieves when swords could not. You have been our protector, our savior, and our truest friend. For that, I cannot treat you as a servant any longer. You are free from this day forward." Morgiana bowed her head. "Master, I have never thought of myself as a servant. You and your son have treated me with kindness, and that has been my reward." Ali Baba smiled. "Then let kindness reward kindness. My son wishes to take you as his wife, if it pleases you." Morgiana looked to Ali Baba's son. His eyes held respect, not pity, admiration, not command. Slowly, she nodded. "If you and your father wish it so, then I am honored." Joy filled the house. The wedding was held a week later, and people came from across the town to celebrate. They danced and feasted beneath strings of lanterns, their laughter echoing through the streets. The tale of the clever woman who defeated 40 thieves spread far and wide. But even in the midst of joy, Ali Baba could not forget the cave, the source of all their fortune and all their danger. So, after the wedding, he decided to return one last time. He rode his donkey to the edge of the desert, where the familiar cliffs loomed over the sands. The air shimmered with heat, and the wind whispered softly through the rocks. He stood before the stone wall and said, just as he had long ago, "Open sesame." The stone parted with a deep rumble, and the cave revealed its treasures, glittering gold, silks and jewels that could have made kings jealous. Ali Baba stepped inside, his footsteps echoing softly, but this time he felt no hunger for riches. He looked around and said quietly, "This cave brought fortune to my family, but it also brought death to my brother and blood to my doorstep. It is time this secret rested forever." He filled one small bag, no more than he needed for his family's comfort, and turned back toward the entrance. When he stepped outside, he whispered for the last time, "Close sesame." The great stone slid back into place with a sound like thunder. The cave disappeared into the mountain, as if it had never existed. Ali Baba bowed his head and made a silent promise never to speak those words again. Years passed peacefully. Morgiana and Ali Baba's son lived happily, their home filled with laughter and children's voices. Ali Baba grew old, his beard turning silver, but his eyes still sparkled with kindness. People came from far and near to seek his advice, for he had become known not only as a man of fortune, but as a man of wisdom. Whenever his grandchildren asked him to tell a story, he would smile and begin, "Once, I was a poor woodcutter, and one day I heard the words 'Open Sesame.'" They would listen in awe as he told of the thieves, the cave, and the clever woman who saved them all. Morgiana would sit quietly nearby, her face glowing with pride and humility. She had never sought fame or gold, only peace. And peace, at last, was what she had. One night, under a sky full of stars, Ali Baba said to her softly, "Morgiana, You have taught me that true wealth is not measured by the gold one owns, but by the goodness one gives. She smiled. And you have taught me that even the poorest man can be rich if his heart is kind. They both looked toward the desert, where the hidden cave slept beneath the sands, its treasure untouched, its secret safe forever. And so ended the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, a tale not of gold, but of courage, cleverness, and the triumph of goodness over greed. Years passed since the day Morgiana saved Ali Baba's household from the last of the 40 thieves. The once poor woodcutter, who had lived in fear and hunger, now lived in peace and honor. His home, once small and humble, had become a place of laughter, wisdom, and generosity. The treasure from the secret cave was used not for greed, but for kindness, to help the poor, to feed the hungry, and to comfort the sick. Ali Baba grew older, but his heart remained full of gratitude. Each morning, he would sit beneath the olive tree in his courtyard, watching children play, Morgiana's children, his grandchildren, their laughter, a reminder of how far life had brought him. One evening, as the golden sunset painted the sky, Ali Baba gathered his family. The air was calm, the scent of jasmine drifting through the courtyard. Morgiana sat beside her husband, Ali Baba's son, her face gentle, her eyes wise. Their children played nearby, chasing fireflies in the dusk. Ali Baba spoke softly, his voice trembling but steady. "My family," he said, "you know the story of how we came to live in this house, how fortune found us when we least expected it. But I want you to remember something far more important than the treasure itself." The children stopped to listen, their eyes wide. "It was not gold that saved us," he continued. "It was courage, loyalty, and wisdom. When the thieves came for me, it was Morgiana who used her mind, not her sword, to defeat them. When greed took your Uncle Cassim, it destroyed him. Remember, my children, wealth without wisdom is a curse." Morgiana bowed her head, humbled by his words. "Master," she said softly, "you give me more credit than I deserve. I only did what my heart told me was right." Ali Baba smiled kindly. "That is exactly why you deserve honor, Morgi. You acted not for gold, not for praise, but out of goodness. And that is the rarest treasure of all." He looked at his son and added, "When I am gone, you must guard this truth as carefully as you would guard gold, for wisdom, once lost, is harder to find than any hidden cave." A few days later, Ali Baba felt his time drawing near. He called his son to his bedside and handed him a small wooden key. "This opens a door to the cave in the forest," he said, "but remember, it is not a place of greed. Take only what is needed, and never forget the price my brother paid for forgetting this rule." His son nodded solemnly. "I will remember, father. I will keep your wisdom alive." Ali Baba smiled faintly, his eyes shining with peace. "Then I can rest, knowing that my family will not repeat the mistakes of the past." With that, he closed his eyes, and his spirit left the world as gently as a candle flame fading into the night. After his passing, Morgiana and Ali Baba's son continued to live as he had taught them, humbly, kindly, and wisely. The secret of the cave remained in the family, passed from one generation to the next, but always with the same warning: take what you need, share what you can, and guard your heart from greed. The townspeople often spoke of Ali Baba, the woodcutter who outwitted 40 thieves and became a man of great wisdom. Yet those who truly knew him said his real treasure was not the gold in the cave, but the goodness he left behind in the hearts of his family. Morgiana's name became a symbol of cleverness and courage. Mothers told their daughters her story, teaching them that a sharp mind and a kind heart could defeat even the greatest dangers. She grew old, surrounded by love and respect, her days filled with peace. One night, many years later, Morgiana sat beneath the same olive tree where Ali Baba had once told stories. The moonlight fell gently across her face as she whispered, "You were right, my master. True wealth is not in gold, but in goodness." Her eyes lifted toward the stars, perhaps toward Ali Baba himself, and she smiled. And so, the tale of Ali Baba and the 40 thieves came to its final rest. The cave still sleeps somewhere in the desert, sealed behind ancient stone, its treasures waiting for another voice to whisper, "Open sesame." But perhaps, if the world remembers the lesson of Ali Baba and Morgiana, the cave will never need to open again. For the greatest treasures, courage, loyalty, and wisdom, already live within the human heart.